This lecture is on political corruption. We've, in the past few weeks, have gone through various forms of state repression, violation of human rights by governments and other institutions and organizations, individuals. And now that we've covered most of the important uses of violence and force, let's shift topics and focus on corruption, which is also elite deviance and involves both government actors and non-government actors. Of course, it's connected and related to government and is a very important form of elite deviance and harms countries around the world. Let's begin first with a definition here of political graft. Political graft is the illegal taking advantage of one's political position to gain assets. So if you are some public official who has power to grant people things, let's just keep it at a fairly low level and say you're a person who has the authority to grant some bar, say a liquor license, and you want to profit off of that power, that authority that you have. You could tell some bar owner who was applying for a license, listen, I'm not going to grant it to you. I'm not going to give you the authority to run this business and make yourself a living unless you pay me some money under the table. And so you basically profit, gain advantage materially through abuse of your power, abuse of your authority. That's just one random example. So this is political graft. This is one problem that you have whenever people have a lot of power. When they have a lot of power, that gives them the ability to abuse that power, at least the temptation to abuse that power, to profit and benefit themselves or maybe other people that they care about, their allies, their family members, etc. There are various forms of graft. We've got these listed here. Bribery, number one. An individual or organization offers money to an official for a favor, right? So individual or organization offers money. Say, hey, listen, if you'll vote this way to pass this legislation that I need for my business to be more profitable, I will give you money in exchange for your vote. Now, you might say, well, hold it. Wealthy people give contributions to politicians all the time. So how's bribery any different from normal business as usual of making campaign contributions? Well, it is sort of a problem when you do make a huge contribution to a politician, even if you don't say anything, even if you don't make a deal based on bribery. There's still kind of a problem because the receiver of that money is inclined to feel indebted to you, grateful and possibly indebted, and feel like they owe you a favor, and maybe they'll vote your way, not because it's best for the country, but it's because that's what you want and what you need, and maybe if they vote your way, then you'll make a political contribution again in the future. See, so there's a lot of sneakiness and questionable ethical behavior here, but typically bribery is defined as a specific, explicit agreement where you are saying explicitly, here's some money, now this is what I want in return for that money. And when you spell it out like that, it's explicit, then you get into an illegal area. And so, again, a lot of this kind of happens on what would you call it, below the threshold, but still unethical, where people don't actually make deals explicitly, but still there's this tit for tat stuff that goes on all the time. Number two, political extortion. The public official demands money in order to get a favor. Listen, you want this legislation passed? Do you want me to sign off on this? Well, then you're going to have to pay up. So here, this is different from bribery because the demand is being made by the politician, the official. Give me money or else you're not going to get what you want. Political extortion. Number three, subtle bribery. The official gets large lecture fees or their foundation gets large donations in exchange for political favors. So here's an example of where it's not explicit, not illegal, but still slimy, and really there's unethical behavior going on here. So I'm going to come to your conference, sponsored by some corporation or maybe some association. I'm going to come and talk to you folks about the issues you care about, political issues you care about. I'm going to speak to you for 30 minutes, and you're going to give me $500,000 for speaking for 30 minutes because I'm a big celebrity politician, and I can demand that sort of money to spend my time to come and speak to you. So you give me $500,000. There's no contract, no explicit contract that I'm going to do anything for you specifically for that $500,000 other than give my short little speech. But again, it's implicit. What's in the minds of these people often is help me out, and sooner or later I'll help you out too, in return, tit for tat. So it's a way to get around the laws and to engage. This is why politics, an example of why politics is such a dirty, unethical business, because this is how things tend to work. People want to take advantage of their power, and people want to use their wealth to buy influence. That happens all the time, unfortunately. Sweetheart deal number 4. The public official gets a great deal or investment in exchange for a favor, right? So, hey, I happen to know about this great investment for you nobody else knows about. This is my area of expertise. I know of a great opportunity. Let me hook you up. Now, again, it's not maybe explicit, but what are you going to do for me now that I just gave you arranged the sweetheart deal for you, and you just made a boatload of money? Well, see, again, maybe it's not spoken. Maybe it may be implicit where it's unspoken, but you sort of owe me. You're obligated. I did something for you, now you need to do something for me. Sweetheart deals. That's another way the common way that the graft happens. Kickback. The official gets an organization a lucrative government contract in exchange for a percentage of the contract. So I'm in a position to decide, a bunch of bids come in for a government contract. So you want to do work for the government, get paid for it. The government has the practice of accepting bids. 5 or 6 different companies are all going to give their estimate of how much they're going to charge to do the service for the government. The way it's supposed to work is a competitive bid where the people who give the cheapest bid, where the quality is going to be the same as for everybody else, but cheaper. Well, that's the one you're supposed to go with, is the least expensive bid. You save the government money that way. But if I use my power and I give you the contract, I accept your bid over the others, even though yours isn't the best, well, then I just did you a big favor. And so what you need to do with this kickback is that what you need to do is you're going to make, $10 million off this deal. I want you to slip me back $1 million of that, 10%. I'm sorry. So 10, you make 10 million, I get 1 million. So it goes back into my pocket, personal pocket, and I'm enriched by it. So these are all, forms of graft, and it's using power to get gain, to get advantage, and all of it's dirty. A common type of corruption is to give preference when granting contracts to organizations that have made contributions to one's campaign. So this happens all the time. Your buddies, your supporters make huge contributions to your campaign to help you win. Well, now you're obligated to them. They coughed up quite a bit of money to help you win, to pay for all your ads and your campaign expenses. So you feel obligated. So you vote their way, not because it's best for the country, but because it's best for that company, for who's ever lobbying you. And it goes around and around. And this is, you ask yourself, well, why is it that individuals and companies and corporations and institutions are willing to pay, to donate thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars into these campaigns? I mean, you'll see top politicians spending more than $1 billion on their campaign. Well, where's all that money come from? Well, a lot of it comes from people who want something for it. And so you're sort of buying, in the most stark terms, you're buying a politician. It's not always as black and white and clean as that, but that's the way the game is played, so it's a problem. It is illegal to make these kinds of deals in a quid pro quo, or in other words, tit for tat way. You can't have a explicit deal, where you spell it out for each side and you say, okay, I'm going to do this for you, you're going to do this for me, deal? Okay, because that's illegal. That's tit for tat. That's quid pro quo, which means the same thing as tit for tat. So corrupt politicians and organizations avoid explicit, clear-cut deals. You often see the correlation, the connection between, this politician received all this money from so-and-so, and they just happen to vote in ways that benefit so-and-so, but it's just happened to, it's correlated. And they may not, since they get donations from lots of different people, they may not be able to please everybody, so you may donate a bunch of money and not get what you were hoping for. Somebody else who's a little more powerful and donate a little bit more, they might get what they want. So, it's not a clean, perfect sort of arrangement. It's a correlation. It's a tendency. And that you can get away with legally, but it's still dirty and it still corrupts the political process where politicians are not doing what's best for us. They're doing what's best for contributors to whoever's, the big money people. Bidding is supposed to lead to the best deal for the government, but it can be corrupted with playing favorites and making policies to eliminate bidding. Examples, dispensing with bidding by calling the situation emergency. Oh, we don't have time to accept 5 or 6 bids. We've got to accept our buddy who just donated a bid quickly and first. We got to move now because it's an emergency. So, so you come up with excuses why you don't have competitive bidding or reserve bidding for the biggest contracts. So again, different sneaky ways of trying to avoid getting the best deal for the government, and for the people, and instead getting a deal that benefits individuals, which is not how it's supposed to work. 90% of defense contracts, so we're talking military here, are not awarded through a bidding system. The justification being that the contract should go to the best, not the cheapest. This opens up a lot of opportunity for graft. So you get sort of, reputation, these big, powerful defense contractors who, are dominant and famous for their being dominant and for their products, and they have a reputation of making good stuff. So why do we need to bother with competition when these folks are the best? It's not like cheapest. You shouldn't go on the cheap. The argument goes like this. You shouldn't go on the cheap for something as important as, defense of the country. So if it costs a lot, well, it's worth it because security, defense of the country is a top priority. So if you don't get competition, if you don't get competitiveness, but you get sort of monopolistic practices, or, again, it's kind of buddy-buddy, old boys network kind of thing where you set your friends up with contracts, and avoid competition, well, you can see opportunities for graft and corruption there. Another thing that complicates it, that's added to this, is that not only are these public officials buddy-buddy with the companies looking for government money, but they also a lot of times, either before they were public officials, government officials, they worked for these companies, or after they leave office, after they retire from being a public official or they get voted out of office or whatever, then they go after they're politicians, they're buddy-buddy with these guys, and they go get a nice, fat, high-paying job with those companies. Here we're talking about defense companies, but it's the same principle in lots of different areas. So you see this chumminess, this friendliness between both sides, and how are you going to be acting the best for the country if you have all these entanglements with friends, with allies, with this sort of buddy-buddy people you're basically kind of doing business with, sort of, that you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of a thing, right? Very, very corrupt sort of stuff. There's tremendous opportunities for profit by gaining access to public lands. Public lands across the country have rights to grazing, timber, minerals, petroleum being probably the priciest, the most profitable. I mean, oil's big money, right? So again, if you are a official who has power to grant who's going to have access to these public lands, these lands that are owned by the country, by the government, you got a lot of power, and there's a lot of temptation there to use that power to enrich your own self. Such a situation is susceptible to bribery and extortion. So, especially in industries or areas with a lot of money, like oil or minerals, other minerals under the ground, there's a possibility of a lot of graft, a lot of corruption in that area because there's big money in that area. Okay, let's stop right there. See you in part 2.